So hello and welcome everybody. My name is Peggy Sundstrom and I'm the lead faculty member for the PhD program in Organizational Development and Leadership within the Forbes School of Business and Technology. I will be the host of this session, which is entitled Integrating NACE Competencies at the Course and Program Level. This presentation is one of 4 in a series called Course Design with Career in Mind. Later today, I will be hosting a panel presentation with all the presenters from the 4 individual presentations. Please check the schedule and join us for the other presentations as well as the panel presentation, which is scheduled for noon Pacific time. Now your microphones are muted for this presentation, but I encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat function. Also, please keep your eye out for a link to a session feedback survey that I will post in the chat. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to our presenters, Dr. William Woods, Dr. Charlie Minnick, and Dr. Bill Davis, all from the Forbes School of Business and Technology here at Ashford. Again, the title of their presentation is Integrating NACE Competencies at the Course and Program Level. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sundstrom. Today we have 3 objectives that we want to share with you. The first one is familiarizing faculty with the 8 NACE competencies. Then we're going to discuss with faculty how NACE and our guests and how NACE was integrated in Business 105. And then lastly, we're going to formulate a method for integration of NACE at the program level. And at this point, what I'm going to do is turn the floor over to my colleague, Professor Bill Davis. Bill, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, William. It's a pleasure to be here and to cover these very important NACE competencies. And what my part is today in today's presentation is to talk a little bit about critical thinking, leadership, oral and written communication. And as William said, you know, our goal is to familiarize you with these career readiness competencies that we use for our students, as well as to talk a little bit how we integrated them into Business 105, and then how we're going to progress with in the future with our programs and doing some aligning and mapping to these so students get the best experience possible, learning experience. Next slide, please. Now, here is how NACE defines these 3 competencies, and these are important. Critical thinking and problem solving is defined as exercising sound reasoning to analyze issues, make decisions, and overcome problems. The individual is able to obtain, interpret, and use knowledge, facts, data in the process, and they may demonstrate originality and inventiveness. Now, critical thinking, Dr. Stephen Brookfield, who I've been a fan of for years, and I've read his stuff and his research, and he just basically says that critical thinking is examining our assumptions with a healthy dose of skepticism so we can make a well-informed choice, because we could be right, we could be wrong. But when we take the time to interpret facts and use our knowledge in data-driven decisions, etc., you know, we're following a good process and we're able to take more informed action, and we're able to make a greater impact, more positive, meaningful impact. Oral and written communications is another one. You know, communication is so important that we articulate our thoughts and ideas clearly and effectively in written and oral forms to people inside and outside the organization. The individual has public speaking skills, is able to express ideas to others, and can write and edit memos, letters, complex technical reports clearly and effectively, you know, breaking all that down so it's understood and people get it. They're able to relate to this, and they're able to use all of these skills, use the information so they can make a greater impact and influence more positive outcomes. And finally, leadership. Leveraging the strengths of others to achieve common goals and use interpersonal skills, those soft skills, to coach and develop others, move them through their learning continuum to make more progress. The individual is able to assess and manage his or her emotions and those of others, to use empathetic skills to guide and motivate and organize, prioritize and delegate work. So these 3 competencies are what I'm covering as a part of the NACE competencies. And what I would just like to say is what we've done is we built a lot of strong awareness to these in Business 105. So when students come in, they're starting to think about how they make decisions and what's the process. They're starting to think about good, high quality communication. They're starting to think about being a leader, you know, influencing positive outcomes, improving people, inspiring. All of that comes together so we impact meaningful results. Now, this is just a slide I wanted to put in. This is off of the Career Readiness website, and it was just a survey that was done where employees were asked, you know, what do you value most in new college hires? What types of competencies are you looking for? And I thought this would be interesting. There's the dates of the survey up there, August 1st through October 8th. A total of 172 surveys were returned and an 18.5% response rate, which is not a bad rate. Now, looking at these, you can see where critical thinking is. They want people to be able to think properly and use the data and use their experiences, observations. They want people that can communicate, oral and written communications. You can see that had a high ranking. And then also leadership, the ability to connect people with systems, how to sustain quality. All of that comes into play as in a leadership component. Now, what I'd like to do right now is turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Charlie Minnick.
Bill, thank you so much. You know, I think when we looked at the NACE competencies, and I think Bill hit it when we designed 105, we put, you know, because there's 8, how do we integrate all 8 of these together so our students come out being exposed and have an idea about what these competencies are? And I think they're important because they're really developed strategies and tactics to help close the gap between higher ed and the world of work. So I think it's important to find out what do employers want and how do we integrate that into our curriculum to best serve our students. So I think they provide a common vocabulary and framework to use when discussing career readiness with students within organizations and as part of public policy. They establish defined competencies as guidelines when educating and advising students, and also establish defined competencies to identify and assess when hiring college educated folks. So I'm going to talk about teamwork, collaboration, career management, professionalism, and work ethic. Then I'll go over a bit about global and intercultural fluency and digital technology. So the first one is I'll talk about is teamwork, collaboration. It talks about build collaborative relationships with colleagues, customers from different cultures, races, genders, those type of things. The individual is able to work within team structure and can negotiate and manage conflict. I think in this day and age, effective teamwork and collaboration is more important than ever, as teams are not only face-to-face, but virtually, being that so many people are now working geographically dispersed. And I think also it talks about effective conflict skills. I think they're absolutely critical in life, especially when we work with colleagues who come from different backgrounds, experiences than we might have ourselves. Sometimes I think one of the challenges is people think that conflict is bad. Well, I think in reality, we need to have respectful, constructive conflict in our work world if we're to move our organizations forward. Next piece is professionalism and work ethic. So we want to demonstrate personal accountability and effective work habits, things like punctuality, working productively with others, time load management, understanding verbal non-communication, and integrity and ethical behavior and acts. So I think when it comes to professionalism and work ethic, I always tell folks, excuse the double negative, is that we cannot not communicate. So by that I mean just showing up is not good enough anymore. How you show up is critical. Are you on time? Are you prepared? Do you shoot straight with people? I always have, when I talk about shooting straight with people, I have this rule I work with people. It's called the no sunshine rule. So I think when I work with students and employees, by that I mean we just shoot straight with each other. If we have a problem, we don't blow sunshine at each other. If we have a problem, let's sit down, let's figure it out together. How do we work through this piece in a professional way to make sure we move the process forward? So I think that brings us then to career management. I found an important piece of effective career management is having a great mentor or coach. I firmly believe that we all get where we are in life because somewhere or more than someone along the way believed in us and provided us with opportunity to move forward. I think for others to help us along the way, we need to share our career goals and aspirations and have that mentor or coach provide us with their valuable insight and guidance to help us reach our personal and professional goals. And I think it's also for it as we move through our career process that we become a mentor and a coach to other people and that we pay it forward. Okay, so next piece I'm going to talk a bit about is, we'll go through like Bill talked about, kind of the survey that was done. And I think what's really important as we design Business 105 and as we move forward, these are not mutually exclusive things. They all have to work together to best serve our students and the organizations in which they work or might work in the future. I think that's when we start developing these, they're really not mutually exclusive. They must lean on one another to be successful. Okay. We can go ahead and move over to the next slide there, William, if you would. So the last two things I'm going to talk about is global and intercultural fluency. With value, respect, and learn from diverse cultures, races, ages, gender, sexual orientation, and religions. You have to be open, inclusive, and sensitive with the ability to act respectfully with people and understand differences. I truly believe in life that none of us is as smart as all of us. Now, Dr. Warren Benn has talked a lot about that in his writings. I think if we always keep that in mind, we need to value, learn, and respect people from diverse cultures, races, gender, sexual orientation, and religions. Not only will it help move our organizations forward and help them grow, it'll also help us grow as human beings, which is equally as important. Diversity is a strength that we must positively acknowledge and embrace. So the last piece I'll talk about is digital technology. I think in today's world, we must be flexible and adaptable. I think COVID-19 has shown us how important technology is for us to solve problems, complete tasks, and accomplish our goals. Not only is it important to leverage existing technology ethically and efficiently, but we must also discover new technologies to help us accomplish those goals as well. Okay. I think this next slide will take us to the chart again. Again, like I said, these are all important. They're all connected. So they're not something that they should be looked individually. As a whole, how did these competencies help connect higher ed and the employment world? So at this point, I'll turn it back to Dr. Woods, who's really going to get into kind of the nitty gritty, how we introduce NACE competencies into Business 105, but also into classes and programs in general. So Dr. Woods, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Minnick. So in looking at the 8 NACE competencies, again, I'm just going to state them again: critical thinking, oral and writing communication, teamwork and collaboration, digital technology, leadership, professionalism, work ethic, career management, and then global intercultural fluency. And one of the ways that you can think about this is I can try to pack them all into one course, or I can spread them out over a number of courses. And if I spread them out over a number of courses, I can take some and put a couple in a course, or I can put just one in a course over the program. And so what we did, we put quite a few into one single course to start out with. And here's 3 of the tactics that you can think about, okay? First is list the NACE competencies in your course and provide a web link to the NACE website. That is one of the things that we did in Business 105 as a starter. Map your current courses to the competencies. And when I talk about mapping your courses, like when you have your CLOs, they're mapped to your PLOs. So your course learning outcomes are mapped to your program learning outcomes. Well, you can take each of the assignments in a course and also each of the discussions in a course, and you can also map those to your particular NACE competencies that you're using in a course. So that's another tactic. The third tactic is create course content that is based upon each competency and integrate NACE throughout the program. And, I think that all three of those approaches, you can use them all in one course, or you can thread it throughout the program. Each of them can prove to be very effective as you create your courses. Now, one of the things that I just talked about was map them in your programs. And so on this particular slide, you can see with discussion program forums, you were supposed to post your introduction, and we have the WLO, so the weekly learning outcomes that particular discussion forum maps to, and then you have one CLO that it maps to, but it also maps to 4 different NACE competencies. Now, what's important about this is that as the students are looking at this, they're becoming familiar with the NACE competencies on a single course level. But when you think about how we do things so far as introducing competencies, then reinforcing competencies by having it throughout the program, and then by the time they get to the last course in their program, then that's where we get to that mastery level. And so one of the things that we did was put a interactive, which was a quiz, into Business 105. And so in the early week of the course, they were able to take this nice little quiz, and they were able to check off how they felt they were doing with each of the competencies. And see at the bottom, one of the people checks off digital technology that they need to develop. And I like the way that it's not saying that you're weak at it, but you personally recognize through the quiz, yes, this is something that I should pay more attention to. And so then you have it on teamwork and collaboration. The person recognizes this is something that I excel at. This is something that I'm comfortable with. This is something that I really feel good about. I love interacting with other people. I love working with other people. I'm what they call a woo, and a woo loves working with other people. Oral and written communications. The person checks off that they're currently developing in that area. And so they have some comfort level with that. It's not strange to them, but they're not excelling at it. And so therefore, hopefully throughout their degree program, they're going to give special attention to that so that they can get even better at it. Here's one of the things I'd like to share with you is that even if you're excelling at something like presentation skills, that's an ongoing thing because every audience that you get in front of is different. So therefore, it may require something different of you when you're giving a presentation. So therefore, excelling in front of one audience may mean that you need to develop more in front of another audience, and because you have different types of audiences. But anyway, with the NACE competencies quiz, then that helps to introduce NACE competencies and in a different way to the students, besides just reading the definitions that we show to you earlier in this presentation. So this allows them to think about it and what they need to do about it, being honest with themselves so that they can move forward. The next thing, here's the big goal. And this is coming to the conclusion of this presentation. The students will become so familiar with the NACE competencies and continue to develop in those areas throughout their careers. If they're becoming really familiar with it, where all of a sudden either they're comfortable with it or they're experiencing some mastery of it, think about how that affects their self-confidence. So that when they get in an interview, they're able to talk about some of those particular skills or competencies and feel comfortable with talking about them. Because you ever have that question in an interview where they say, so tell us about yourself. What's one of the reasons why I should hire you? What are you strong at? What's the areas that you would desire to improve upon? And so with the NACE competencies, you can say, you know what, for the last 2 years in my program in college, I actually have been working on digital technology, becoming more familiar with the online environment, giving speeches online and preparing presentations through software like Sway or PowerPoint so that I could get better at that, become more fluent with it. And then also I decided that I needed to know more about other cultures, because where I grew up at in some part of the nation, it just didn't have a lot of different diversity there. So now through my program, I've been studying and studying greatly, and I'm feeling more comfortable, and I'm looking forward to interacting with more cultures as I go throughout my career with my employment at your place of employment. So when we think about the 8 NACE competencies, it goes throughout their career. We want them to become familiar with it. And the ways that we can do it is to build assignments around the NACE competencies, map the NACE competencies, so that the students can become familiar with it that way, and then give them the quizzes, and be able, as instructors especially, to be able to talk about the NACE competencies when you see students excelling in one of those areas in a discussion or even in an assignment. So at this time, that concludes our presentation, and I would like to open up the floor to questions if you have some for the three of us.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I have a question to start us off. For people who are not familiar with the course, could you please tell us what BUS 105, what the content of the course is and why you started with this class? And then, William, if you want to just stop sharing your screen, that would be great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'd like to defer to Dr. Minnick on this.
Yeah, so Business 105, it's business and academic success. So it's the very first course that our Forbes School of Business and Technology students take when they come into Ashford University. So we wanted to make sure when we introduced them to the program, that we introduced them to, you know, some leadership management skills, plus also, again, the NACE competencies, plus also the myriad of resources that are available for our students to help be successful with student supports, our student support center that we have. Just tons of resources are available. So it's really, we launched it in July because everyone used to take kind of, irregardless of what major, they used to take the same general introduction course. You know, as we work with faculty and feedback from students, we felt it was important to have kind of a business specific entry point course for our students. So that's why Business 105 was developed, and we launched it in July.
Great. So the course is intended to get students first introduced to their program. So it would seem like that's a logical place to begin to introduce them to these NACE competencies, right?
Exactly. So I think that's why we want to get right from the beginning, we want people to start thinking about kind of, Stephen Covey talks about begin with the end in mind. So we wanted to talk about, here's the competencies you're going to need as you graduate from your program. Let's start thinking about them right from day one. So Peggy, you're exactly right. That's why we deliberately integrated them in course number 1.
That makes perfect sense. And how are students reacting to them? Those of you who are teaching this class, I know it's a pretty popular class. Have students recognized that something is different?
Yeah, I kind of let Bill or William, if you guys, we've all three taught it, so maybe, you know, I mean, I've had great experience. Students have loved it. Faculty have really saw value in it. But I'll let my colleagues kind of what they're.
One of the things I liked about it was that the students rated the course highly, and the course is a little bit different than the traditional entry-level course because, one, okay, it helps them with their writing skills, it helps them with the writing center, it helps them with all the tools that we have available to assist the student here at Ashford University so that they have the ability to persist and to move through their program. But also, it integrates some of the discipline of management and leadership into the very entry-level course so that the students get a vision of, okay, hey, I'm not just going to talk about reading and I'm not just going to talk about writing. I'm also going to talk about what I came to Ashford University for. And so I'm going to learn some of those things right away. And so that helps to center the student so that, like what Dr. Minnick was talking about, start with the end from the beginning so that they can see all the way through the program and have a certain level of excitement about it.
Right, right. Members of our audience, if you have questions, you can pose them in the chat for our presenters? And since I am fascinated with this, tell me a little bit more about the formal mapping process. We talked about the fact that our new institutional learning outcomes are linked to those NACE competencies. So do you see this perhaps here at Ashford becoming a more standard kind of process of mapping both to our ILOs and to NACE to introduce students to that broader perspective of what's required for success in the workplace?
Well, I think that is vitally important from the standpoint of one, is that Dr. Craig Swinson has spoke about it, from the top, and then the deans are speaking about it. And so because we are a learning institution, we are an education institution, then we have to be able to measure what we do. We have to be able to track what the students are doing. So by mapping it, it makes it so that we can see where the students are being taught about certain NACE competencies and what assignments are associated with those. And then we're able to also, if you do this in your program, where you take and put the assessment at the beginning of your program and maybe at an intermediate spot in your program, and then at the end of the program, how the students are actually scoring themselves throughout the process and what they've all of a sudden gained more efficiency or proficiency at in those NACE competencies.
Right. So one last question. We just have about a minute left, but a question came into the chat of how you might align digital portfolios to the NACE standards.
And I think Michelle Leckerkirk, who is really our instructional designer for this wonderful project, her and our assessment people were just fantastic. So it's not to underestimate their importance, the assessment people and design people in this process. Yeah, I think they tagged their portfolio with the NACE competencies. So maybe is there some general outcome for the portfolio, and then it's how it feeds into it. But I think the key is a real general sort of deliberate awareness on the front end. How do we, and then when students get to done, don't just tell me about what you've done, you can show me what they've done, and here's how it aligns to these various competencies that employers are looking for. So,
right, and when you're looking at the competencies, and you think about the technology competency, so portfolio or portfolium, that would map to the technology competency. And what's great about it is if they're using that throughout the course or throughout the program, then they get a proficiency in that area.